I discovered LiveO2 at the Bulletproof Conference back in 2017 in Pasadena, California. I had torn my Achilles tendon and I was walking around there on some like crutching around and came across the LiveO2 and met Mark and he let me do the LiveO2 on like a hand wheel type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
And I really loved it. And I thought this is a pretty profound modality. So I ended up buying one and I used it to help recover from my Achilles tendon rupture and just for inflammation purposes and getting blood and oxygen down to that injury. And I love it. I really feel like it is something that has a lot of, since I've been using it since that injury, it's just it's a very powerful modality. It really
Mhm.
is, and I love my system. I love it, and since then I've upgraded to the extreme version of it. Yeah, yeah, I'm a two-time Olympic gymnast and competed on every continent except for Antarctica. I was in film and television and commercials, and I mean, full-blown career, 20-something year career, Hall of Fame inductee. And I was in my mid 40s working on a Nike commercial with the director was Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, who was a two-time Oscar-winning director. And we were just doing like really good work. And I, I thought I should probably call it. It's getting a little bit, sketchy. The floor wasn't really that safe, and I felt like I was pushing it and I just got caught in the moment, and I ended up not saying anything and rupturing my Achilles, and it's a big learning lesson. I mean, 999,999 times out of a million, it would never have happened
Yeah.
because I really, know my limits and I'm a professional in that regard. But I just got caught, and it's a terrible injury. When, stuff like that happens, having been an athlete, immediately I went into that Olympian like recover, sort of mindset came back in, and I took my approach to recovery as serious as I did making an Olympic team, because I said I don't want to have a permanent, I don't want to have any limitations in this body. My body
Yeah.
is so precious to me. So the injury was 2018 maybe, and I was running in 5 months. So I threw the kitchen sink at it. I
Okay.
threw everything I knew, and I know quite a bit of stuff in terms of from the medical field to biohacking and all that. So I I was right. It's usually the fastest they'd ever seen someone recover was 6 months, and I was running in 5 months. And the place that I rehabbed in Los Angeles was the place that all the top athletes rehab, Conor McGregor and
Mhm.
Kobe Bryant, all that. So, um, yeah, they were pretty impressed. I used a lot of stuff, peptides, and I, told my doctor like put me on growth hormone, and I was using a lot of blood flow restriction, a ton of essential amino acids, and I mean, just threw the kitchen sink at it. You know, it was the first time when I used the Libo 2. I mean, you're so aware when you have an injury that about stepping or anything because it's like your brain connects with this injury. After I did Libo 2 was the first time I got off the bike, and I literally, my brain had forgotten that I was injured. I almost started walking normal, and I realized, no, don't
Oh,
do that,
yeah, 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 yeah.
And I don't know if it was just because I got so much like blood flow and oxygen to that area that it really desensitized that protective mechanism in some way. It was really interesting. It allowed me to, I think, really protect my metabolism too,
Mhm.
because you can ride a bike with a torn Achilles. You can put your foot in a boot if you have to, and you can ride a bike. But it allowed me to maintain a high metabolism where I had workload capacity
Mhm.
while I was rehabbing. Because usually, if you're sedentary and you're in crutches and you're sitting a lot and you had surgery, I mean, for 6 weeks you can't do anything. So very sedentary. So that allowed me to preserve my metabolism so that I didn't have to, in the middle of trying to rehab from this, have an impaired, amount of workload that I could do because I just metabolically was exhausted. I mean, I go through phases of really using it quite consistently. Then I'll take breaks. I mean, I just moved to Las Vegas from Los Angeles, so I literally had a break from it, and I finally got it all set up now, and I've started using it again. I'm like, I love this thing. I call it like legalized blood doping, and it it really it was kind of my secret weapon for a while because I could be shredded, so what I like to do is I would start on the LiveO2, and I would do a protocol that I was doing back then. And then I would go I had everything in my place in LA, so I didn't have to go to a gym or anything. So it allowed me to stage everything like really, really nice. So what I would do is I would start with the LiveO2. I would work up a massive like sweat. I would do a lot of like sprint and interval training with the oxygen, kind of just load my body with all this oxygen. Then I would go downstairs and I would turn on my red light panels. I have a bunch of them, whatever. And then I would do weight training. And I would weight train, and I would use a red light. And then I would go and I would sit in a sauna right after that. And then, take like a cold shower afterwards. And man, I built the best physique I ever had. I was like shrink wrapped. I had a ton of energy, like a ton. And I was strong, muscular, a lot of energy, lean. So when you kind of combine all that stuff with exercise, and you can find some really good things. But what I have found using the LiveO2 is it just gives me a ton of energy. I mean, it is just that ultimately is what it does. So there's these downstream effects to having energy. Maybe you use that to work out harder, smarter, and maybe you get leaner, maybe you get stronger, maybe you just make more money because you have more energy. Whatever it is, it just gives me more energy. Period. You can go through these phases, especially because there's so much information coming at us, and we've just kind of all recovered from like a big global issue thing that's happening, all the news and everything. And you can really get exhausted in life. You can really go through periods where like not just weeks, but months go by where you just have no energy. And I find that the LiveO2 system really helps keep the lights on in terms of energy production, and it just rejuvenates my metabolism. And the protocol, how it's kept evolving, and I've upgraded with it. And I mean, the first time I was on the new system, my new adaptive extreme system, the first 2 or 3 times it was so profound that I just wept. I like had a cathartic experience. Like it just, I was like, it purged like everything out of me. So it's like, not only is it giving you like this energy, but it has the ability, if you really go for it, to just almost cleanse you out. Fascinating. It's a fascinating product, and I love it. So I upgraded to the newer extreme adaptive system. I had the older adaptive system, and I feel like the new one, especially just even the mask, was such an upgrade. But also the way that the protocol, in the old one, it sort of felt like a version 1 protocol, and the extreme adaptive is like a more version 2 type protocol, where you're going further, at least I am, into the realm of hypoxic training. And I just feel like it is as good as this first system was. The second system is, I feel like it's a must. The upgrade, I feel like, is a must, because it is immediately, I was like, oh my God, this is really an advanced way of training hypoxic and with oxygen. And I like that I have worked my way up to a very high altitude, to the red, 20,000 feet or whatever it's the equivalent of virtually. And really trying to sustain and keep my body at that point where I'm staying hypoxic. And then when I can't take it, I flip the switch, give myself some oxygen, and come right back. And so I like to try to stay as long as I can in that adaptive threshold. And I go to a lot of conferences, and I'm seeing a lot more presentations on hypoxic training. And I mean, in the past, like I have the Nano V right next to me, so I always I kind of feel like I staged a lot of this stuff really well. Where, but I like the hypoxic, a more intense hypoxic training, and I think the new adaptive system is totally catered towards that. Everyone knows, like, if they get on a bike and they ride as fast as they can, within about not too long, under a minute, you're going to start to taper off. When you hypoxic train and then for a while, and then you flip the switch to oxygen and you go full out, and you start surpassing what is energy system, even human ability, like when you feel like you're sprinting as fast as you can for 2 minutes, you are going to have a profound experience. And so I have just found that I had amazing results with the first system I had, but I'm having profound experiences, like that cathartic, almost purging of emotions. And like, really, like, I called up Annette, who was my, point of contact with LiveO2 after I got the new system. And I said, what in the hell? This is unbelievable. She was like, right, I told you. I have a lot of stuff. I have saunas, I have red lights, I have so much gear. There's nothing like a LiveO2 system. There really isn't. There's nothing. I don't get anything like it from anything else. It is really hard to explain to somebody. And maybe you come over and you try one session, you're like, yeah, that was pretty good. But like, if you get a little bit in shape for LiveO2, you do a couple of sessions and really adapt enough into it where you can really drive it and you understand how it works. And so you know where you can really push and you can really go for it. That's where I think you get something that is completely unique than anything else. My point of contact was Annette, and so I can only speak with her. And I can tell you that I had a surplus of support. That woman gives me as much time as I could ever want and ask for. We've had multi-hour conversations about things, and she would explain it. I mean, I have notebooks, where like she basically explained the entire protocol from start to finish, and I've written it down. I'll do it, and I'll come back to her, and I'll say, "Great," and then she'll be like, "Great, now try this." And what did you notice with that? And so, it's the support and the hand holding with LiveO2 is honestly, it's unparalleled. I mean, I don't know of any other product that I've ever purchased that has the same level of invested interest in making sure that you know how to use the product and you get it. Literally, I have as much customer support as I could possibly want. I could go down and slice a million different ways of trying to do this and asking questions, and she's been there for me every single time. So it's been, that won't be the limitation. If you get one of these systems, customer support will not be a limitation in any capacity. Hey, there's a generosity at the top in terms of the heart is really aligned in wanting to help people, and it just seems like the organization has that as a core value. And everyone that it seems like that I speak with involved in the company has a system and uses it and loves it and is an evangelist of it. So that says a lot. If you already believe in the science, let's say you're convinced that, hey, I believe this is a great modality for XYZ, whatever you're trying to achieve. Well, then when you get to add the experience part of people that are using it that work for the company that sort of say, hey, like you have said, there's these breathing protocols I like to do at the end and this and that. Like that's what an Olympian is. Like an Olympian, like if you work with someone who was like us, like has found all the little ways and nuances of doing something and mastering it and trying it, experience on top of the science really gives you, I think, the best programming. It gives you the best odds of like really, getting the most out of something. It's not just a paint by numbers type thing. It's like, hey, I'm always looking for the nuance. Tell me what works for you. Tell me how you tweak this thing. What have you noticed when you do this? And like, and what can I glean from that? Because, I have found that the way that I use this thing is slightly evolved over time, right? In the beginning, it's really sort of like, it's like in chunks. It's like, I do this, they told me to do this. But if you keep listening to yourself and then you keep giving feedback to the customer support and they keep kind of, okay, make sure you sprint up a little bit in your hypoxic state to get up to that level where you're a little bit depleted of oxygen. Don't burn out the whole bag of hypoxic air, and you start, filling in the gaps and learning how to get the most out of the system. So really appreciate what you guys do. Inevitably, in being in this industry, I have people call me up. There was a guy he was the Olympic coach for the men's gymnastics team. And he said, look, we're building this new training center, going to have the top men's gymnast training here. And we want to win the Olympics. And we want to, I know that you know all these different things to help athletes. And I want you to help me build out this training center with all these cool gadgets and stuff you have. So I was like, well, you have to get a LiveO2 system for them. So I got them like the dual one. And I said, this is like legalized blood doping. So you guys are going to have, more endurance than, potentially other athletes on the floor. And so there's this, I don't know if anyone is listening to this knows what the pommel horse is. And you go around the pommel horse in these circles. And so in order to train your endurance for that event, you'll do sets of circles, like 60 and 70, and it's not easy. And he said these guys were struggling to do 60 before the LiveO2 system. Then once they started using it, he said they were just doing it no problem. So it's really neat when it's like, okay, I use a LiveO2 system and I have results and and I love it. But it's another thing to be able to like recommend it to like some of the top athletes in the country and watch how it works for them. It's one of those things I just feel very lucky to have a system. I really do. I would say, the two things I feel the most fortunate to have in my arsenal is my sauna and my LiveO2. Like those two things just really, I'm so grateful to have because they are such force multipliers for, physiological change and just feel I can make myself feel great no matter what with those two modalities. A lot of times when we're in great health, we tend to be a little bit more complacent and we're just sort of like, that looks pretty cool. And, I learned from going through an injury and taking the plunge on a lot of these things like a LiveO2 system that I am so grateful that I did. I'm so grateful that I actually just said, I'm going to go for it. What's more important than my health and feeling great? I will do my part at my job or what kind of work I do or my business. I will do my job. If I have energy and I have health, that's all I can really ask for. Like if I have that, I will do great stuff. If you're so skeptical and you wait and you sit on the fence, don't sit on the fence your whole life and have these things come into your life, by maybe fortuitous serendipity that are the right things for you. And you just kind of sit on your hands and you don't partake in it. Like, I can tell you 100%, if you get a LiveO2 adaptive system and you use it, your energy levels are going to change. They are going to be increased 100%. It makes me feel a certain way that no other thing gives me that punch